ranking American transit that I've been on so far. Right, we're back in tier list. I've been in the US and Canada. I've been in the US and Canada before. I have ridden on a lot of the transit. Well, maybe not for someone who lives in the US, but I've ridden on quite a lot of the transit in the US. Some more obscure, some less obscure. And I thought I would rank them for a bit of content. So we have here a lovely tier list. Whipped this up myself with some funky little touches there. You get straight in. BART, if you don't know, BART is the sort of subway-ish in San Francisco and surroundings. It was many years ago that I was in San Francisco, and I understand the city has changed somewhat since then, for better or worse. There are some fantastic transit projects going on in San Francisco. Caltrain or CalMod, sorry. I know Muni opened a new metro, or a new sort of tunnels underground, but it's a tram tunnel, so yeah. But BART, when I was riding it, it took about 10 minutes to buy a ticket, which is too long. The station was quite dirty, and frequency, yeah. Look, I think this will become a common trend. It's built to take cars off highways on peak hour. It's not built to be really convenient to use outside of the daily commute. And for that reason, I'm going to put it in B tier. It does the job of getting cars off the highway and onto a train. And they have some fantastic trains now. Or they have some pretty nice looking new trains. But they need a bit more work, you know. They're almost circumferential, but just needs a little bit more. But, I mean, on the whole, the transport in San Francisco has gotten a lot better, and it is going to continue growing. So hopefully I can come back to that in a few years' time, and it will be somewhat higher. Right, Sound Transit. This is the transport authority for Seattle. They have a few sort of tram train-ish lines. Much like Muni, they've got trams in tunnels acting like a metro in the city centre. Sort of like an S-bahn, but with trams. It's a bit weird. They're building more of them, which is, again, a bit weird. They also run a commuter rail service with bi-levels and diesel. And buses, I think. Seattle's got some fantastic trolley buses. They're pretty cool. But the trams were all right. I mean, they go to the airport, so that's a bonus. But they are trams, and they are in tunnels. So I'll put it in C tier. It didn't, you know, I don't think back to it and go, wow, that was amazing. Like, it was clean, it worked, but it's not impressive. It's not impressive. TransLink is Vancouver. I'm going to put this straight into A tier for the SkyTrain alone. It's pretty cool. I like elevated rail. I think it's the best advertisement for trains, is to put them on stilts and show people how much faster than driving they are. Pair that with the fantastic headways. I'm pretty certain Vancouver still has trolley buses, but I could be wrong there. They run like a ferry service, and it might be TransLink that runs, was it the West Coast Express, I think, maybe? A commuter rail service. It did strike me as odd that... Oh, it does go to the airport as well, so points for that. But it did strike me as odd the Canada line, which is the newest line of the SkyTrain, is only built for 2-car long trains, which is what it already operates with. So there's really no scope for future train lengthening. So the only scope for network capacity enhancements is just to get more trains, but you know, you'll run out of space pretty quickly, and you'll need to end up doing quite costly platform extensions, which seems like a bit of a mistake, but whatever. I guess it works for now. And also they've got sort of two different incompatible systems, but it's a problem for another time, and if they're all fully self-contained, it doesn't really matter anyway. And I know they're doing, is it the Surrey extension, I think? Or it was something else, in the southeast. That'll add a few more stations to the SkyTrain. Right, TexRail, we'll start with this. This is a really odd one, and unfortunately it is going to go straight into E tier. It's a railway running between Dallas-Fort Worth Airport and Fort Worth. It takes about an hour to go the full way. I rode more or less the full length to get into Fort Worth from the airport and back, obviously. But it's a very bureaucratic railway. It seems like a politician's toy, politician's project. Super clean. Cleanest trains I've ever been on. Cleanest platforms I've ever been on. But there's a reason for that. It's because no one uses the system. They've got fantastic trains, fantastic Stadler flirts, super comfortable, super quiet, even considering it's diesel. But there's problem number one. If you're building a new railway using modern multiple units, electrify it, for Christ's sake. And double track. It's single track with passing loops. You've shot yourself in the foot with capacity. You're already running at the minimum headway. It just doesn't go anywhere either. Well, it does, but there's no development around it. There were a few people using Grapevine Station, but no one was using it to get to the airport. But that's a whole separate issue. Dallas-Fort Worth Airport is so badly laid out. You have to get on this shitty shuttle bus that takes you around. That takes 10 minutes to go, 200 meters by the crow flies. But anyway, back to TexRail. It just, we got the bus to a station and there was nothing there. There was, buses turning up every 5 minutes with no one on them to this station that gets a train every half hour in each direction, which isn't bad, and no one was on them. And it seems like a misguided system as well. Like we were on the platform. When I say we, I mean me. I'm using royal we. And you look at the next train information, and it only turns on, the next train screen only turns on, really, 2 minutes from when the train arrives, which is not helpful. And it was wrong. The clock was wrong on the platform. The clock on the screen was wrong. Then it said the next train would be westbound towards Fort Worth, but it was an eastbound towards the airport. And because it's single track, it's the same platform, so you could have very easily gotten on completely the wrong train and then gone the wrong direction, had to wait half an hour for the next train. Bad. That's really bad. And it has the bones of a fantastic system, but it just isn't one at the moment. Trinity Metro, on the other hand, the sort of overarching body, and my experience on these two was so contrasting that I had to split them up, which, even though the others I haven't. Trinity Metro, I'm going to put in C tier. I mean, I'm talking about the buses here, but they weren't awful. They have stop announcements. They were reasonably frequent, 10-minute headways for some random route in the middle of Fort Worth, a completely car-dependent city where you got monster trucks with strip lights in the wheel arches. Out of this world level car dependence, but the buses turn up. There's no... Oh no, there was live tracking as well. There's bonus points there. And as I mentioned earlier, fantastic connections with the train stations. They got that all worked out. There's just no one uses them. And I guess that's the sort of American perception that public transport is for poor, stinky... I probably shouldn't say that, but poor, stinky people who can't afford a car. Such is life, such is life. Dart, I'm going to put this one in D tier. Mixed feelings. It goes lots of places, but it's quite slow. and it goes lots of places, but the trains are awful. It just, yeah, it's okay. It's okay. Look, it works. It does the job, but it's very dirty. Didn't really feel super safe. There were, druggies, and homeless people. Not that that is an issue, but it just reflects a greater issue in governance, that they're not being cared for in other ways and have to resort to using public transport. The fair policeman came in and half the train got off because they didn't have tickets. Like a properly troubled system, but they're pushing ahead with programs. But like the trains need to go. They're fucking awful. They're not trains, they're trams, but they're high floor trams with low floor platforms. You have to step up, and then they've got this weird sort of accessibility middle low floor section. Awful. Also, everyone was vaping and smoking cigars on the platforms, which not a criticism of the system, just the people using it. Although not even a criticism of the people, because they're, the particular demographic is quite vulnerable to that kind of industry. Anyway, we'll move on. I didn't even say where Dart was. That's Dallas. Dallas Area Rapid Transit. Right, this one should be pretty simple. New York City Transit. I'm going to put this one... Well, I sort of have to put this in A tier, I must say. And by this, I really mean the New York subway. And it's got a few trump cards. Express service is one, and the sheer scale of the system is another. But then there are some drawbacks, like it is so disgusting. It is filthy. The ticketing is only just approaching sort of 10-year-old technology, in Sydney, which is... It doesn't have sort of a world standard public transport system, but we've had tap and pay with your credit card, pay with your phone for pushing 10 years now, and you would expect that New York City, with the New York City subway, the perhaps most well-known system in the world, would have that technology, especially when their MetroCard contract was with Cubic, who supply London and Sydney with the technology that they were using for like contactless cards 10 years ago. Why didn't you roll Omni out earlier? And of course, I still got a Metro card because you have to. That's the law for rail fans. You cannot leave if you didn't get a Metro card in New York. You did not go to New York. But we ended up. I keep saying we. I mean I ended up just paying with Omni most of the time because the Metro cards, half the time you swipe, it doesn't work. Swipe, you've got not enough balance on it, and then you have to go and fiddle with a stupid machine for 300 fucking years trying to put more money on it. Pain in the ass. Get rid of them, but keep them because they look cool and they're sort of 80s nostalgia, but they're driving the biggest subway system in the whole world. And the other turnstiles, what the fuck are turnstiles? Like, get rid of them. No wonder your fare evasion rates are so high. You just have to jump over them. Ridiculous. But yeah, the express services. I will have dreams about living in a city with proper express service. Not even most European, not even Switzerland has urban express service on the level of New York. That is properly fantastic. Metro North. I did not happen to go on the LIRR, but I did go on Metro North. I'm going to stick it in A tier as well, I think. Trains were clean, good headways for this service once you consider it. The people, it was a bit of a weird experience because the train had several different conductors, mostly just checking tickets with an old-fashioned clicky. I believe... Oh no, they do have a sort of app to buy tickets, but they don't have a sort of tap and pay system. I got a paper ticket because, memorabilia. And it was just, stepping back 10 years again, the ticketing situation. But I think it works, and it's a sort of bigger system, like a more proper commuter railway. So I guess paper ticket, like if you were doing that journey in the UK, you could get a paper ticket and you could get someone to come around and clip it. So I guess that's not really a big deal. Was it fast? Sort of. I guess it was still sort of a bit dirty and a bit run down in the same way that the New York subway is. And you just get the overall feel that perhaps, a little bit more funding. And on a sort of tangent, if you're wondering who the person who started cutting the MTA's budget was Rudy Giuliani, who is, oh yes, that's right, that's Donald Trump's personal lawyer, or former personal lawyer. So, that's a real plus one there. NJ Transit, this is a hard one, because it's not awful, but I think I'll put it in B tier. Good electric service. Electric service is, I like it. But they use sort of a funky electric locomotive system. They've got a few EMUs, and they've got some bimode. What are they? ALP 45 or 46 or something. But no, it was all right. The conductors were very nice people, and the people on the platform were very nice. Tickets were perhaps the easiest to get out of all of the systems. Perhaps. They're very intuitive. You just say where you're starting, or you just say where you're going, and it spits out a ticket. Unlike the other ones. Oh, I guess the Metro North was somewhat like that. The trains themselves were quite dirty. Well, not dirty, but just sort of have a very dated aesthetic to them. And this is also a general theme, but all of the trains have wheel flats. Have you heard of a wheel, Dave? Try using them, because I thought Sydney was bad for wheel flats, but my goodness, it was only like a 20-ish minute journey on NJ Transit, but in the, what do they call them, the Comet cars, that was like a bone shaker, the amount of, just wheel flat, dun 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 dun. But, pretty fast way to get around, rocking around at, 90, 100 miles an hour? Pretty sure it's 100. And as well, it is, I've driven that section a reasonable amount in Train Sim World, and to be on it in real life was pretty cool. I've been on that section of NJ Tran. Well, not quite the whole thing, but yeah, going into New York Penn was quite good. STM. This is Montreal, but sort of inner Montreal. The buses and the metro. The metro is fantastic, clean-ish, somewhat dated aesthetic on the stations. The new trains are fantastic. Some of the best trains that I've been on in a while. Yes, they're rubber tired, which I have reservations about, because it's just so fucking loud, and proprietary and less efficient and whatnot. But they are such good trains. Very clear announcements. No nonsense announcements. Very clear wayfinding. Very clean, very pleasant to travel on. Even with plastic seats, they're comfortable, and inviting, and that's a good way to attract patronage. And it shows, because it's one of the best patronage systems in North America, the Montreal Metro. I did not ride buses, but they looked to be fairly omnipresent. But Montreal is a city. I watched Not Just Bike's most recent video on Montreal, and I thought, yeah, some parts of it were okay, but some parts of it were not great. like in the old town, and there was this sort of public plaza, and it was sort of slightly pedestrianised, and it was all brick, and then the road surface was the same brick, which I don't think is a good idea, because then there's sort of no distinction between the road and the pedestrian plaza. But then I thought, okay, this is alright, I guess. If the drivers know that they're driving sort of through a pedestrian plaza and they're doing 5 or 10 kilometres an hour, but nope, just whiz straight through this pedestrian plaza at 50 or 60, roaring straight through, and there's no barrier at all, not even psychological, between pedestrian space and road space. If you were even slightly blind or deaf or something, or just a child, you could just walk straight onto the road thinking it was a continuation of the plaza and get mowed down by some soccer mum in an SUV. But S-tier, because that has nothing to do with the metro itself. Calgary. The C train was pleasant, a bit strange, the setup that they have running straight through the middle of the city, but I guess much like Dart. The trains are nice, much better than Dart. They have high platforms by memory. And again, they're sort of trams, but high platform and high floor, so they're quieter, more comfortable, they can get up to more speed. It gets reasonably far, but I cannot vouch for the buses because I did not use them. But I'll put this in C tier because it's, again, it's not astounding. Like, I wasn't blown away, but it wasn't bad. It was not bad. Okay, the REM. That is the new system that's just opened in Montreal. I have some larger reservations about the REM because I've seen lots of people just going on rants, mostly driven because it's a new system and it's in North America and that combination is quite rare nowadays. But there are some blindingly obvious things that just strike me as odd, like just like the Canada line on the SkyTrain. The platforms are only built for 4-car trains, which is what they're already running on, so there's not much space for service expansion. As well, it's sort of built as a light metro, not a proper metro, which seems odd because it's going to function as a proper metro with platform screen doors and sort of fast highway median running, which leads on to my other point. It's too slow. There's a dead straight section straight through the middle of a motorway, and the trains were topping out at 85 kilometers an hour. They have a design speed of 100. The tracks are perfectly straight. Let them run at 100. I'm not an engineer, but that's pretty common sense to me. If you're putting trains in the middle of a highway, make them faster than the cars. Either slow the cars down or make the train quick, because otherwise people will look at the train and laugh and not use it. If you want people to use the train, it needs to be faster than the cars. It needs to be faster than cars all the time, not just in the busy peak. Because when I looked out the train, one side, the traffic was motionless, gridlocked, because it was peak hour in one direction. But the other side, kind of flying past. Obviously in the other direction, but they were going much faster than the trains were. And that's a problem. That's a problem for transport like the REM. As well, it's a bit clunky. The trains themselves, barring the speed, they're fine. They've clearly whoever the overlords buying rolling stock in Montreal, they know what they're doing. But the announcements are just a bit dodgy. The door chimes are a bit dodgy. The setup at Brossard, I think it was quite disappointing. I was expecting more from what people... But, I walked out of the station into the biggest parking lot I've ever seen in a train station. And I know there are bigger ones, like, don't get me started on that. But the biggest one that I'd personally seen, and it took, 20 minutes just to walk around the car park.
But it is all right because you can watch trains from it because the train depot is on one side of the car park and the station is on the other, and there's a sort of horseshoe curve of sorts that connects the two. And then on the other side of the station from that is a big bus interchange, which was quite busy. And it just seemed like such wasted space that you could just put a few tower blocks and a few shops in, and you'd have some more patronage. And as well at Brossard, there were 3 platforms, but only one of them can be used to turn back trains. You got 2 platforms that in the busiest peak hour are just dead weight. That's bad as well. You've just kneecapped capacity to sort of 4-minute headways, which is what you're already running on. So it's maxed out capacity at the moment. There's no scope for increasing that, really. And I understand they'll probably introduce new turning points as more of the system opens up, and that will be something that I follow intently because it's a big project, and it genuinely could shape the way for North American transport projects. And it's going to be good that Montreal gets the airport connected up. That will be very good. So I'll put it in C tier for those reasons. I need to make that a bit smaller. I'll probably make this a bit smaller. Amtrak, I took the Adirondack, I hope I pronounced that correctly, I think so, from New York to Montreal. Walk on the train at New York Penn, P32 up to Albany, and then swapped out for P42, the rest of the way into Montreal. Walk onto the train, and I was genuinely blown away by the legroom. The Amfleet 2, even in coach, or economy, or standard class, you could put an entire suitcase, a big suitcase in front of you, and I did, and still have more legroom than you get on a budget airline. It was enormous space in front of you. The seats were relatively comfortable. Bearing in mind this was an 11-hour train journey, this was a serious journey, the longest you would get before you end up in sleeper territory. The scenery was fantastic, but that's not Amtrak's thing. Speed was alright, got up to 110 miles an hour, 180 kilometers an hour for a bit, up to Albany, that's the fast bit, and then you get the slow stuff. And what was quite annoying was the horn that just would not stop. All the time, it was just level crossing after level crossing, which meant 20 seconds of horn here, 20 seconds of horn there, 20 seconds of horn at this place. Constantly for 11 hours. As well, the cafe car was not serving mac and cheese. That was very disappointing. Not that I would have had it, because it looks fucking rank. But the carriage, the Amfleet, had the heating on full, which, okay, it was snowing outside, have the heating on, but not necessarily on full, and not on full when that means that it is going to be quite literally the most humid environment I have ever been in ever. There was no moisture in the air, and I had a blinding headache after about hour 5. And of course there was a wheel flat, which was fun at 110 miles an hour. In a 50-year-old, I think, Amfleet. I think. Could be wrong, and I'm sure you'll tell me. And I can't speak really on Amtrak on what I'm about to say because I was not on the train. Oh, sorry, I've completely forgot to mention. We were an hour late arriving into Montreal. 10 minutes late leaving New York. Then, half an hour late in Albany, and just kept picking up delay after delay. But we never really stopped for freight trains. It was just, I don't know, maybe the snow, wrong type of snow. And again, when I was at New Rochelle, which some of you might know because I made 2 shorts from there, there was a Northeast Regional train that arrived, ACS 64 up front, and that was half an hour late. So lateness seems to be, and from what I've seen on the internet, is completely confirms this, that lateness is, an hour or less late is on time for Amtrak. But it does cover the whole country, it's relatively good service, and it's not super expensive, and it's a very pleasant way to travel. And, compared to Via, which I've also forgotten to put up here, so I have to have another cut for that. Compared to Via, the border crossing process was, you just walk up to someone at New York Penn, and it's just some, 20-year-old who just a regular Amtrak employee, not a border guard, who doesn't give a toss. He just gives you a bag tag, like a very cool bag tag that I've still got. And then when you cross the Canadian border, it's just some customs man who comes up and just stamps your passport very briefly, and they don't even care if you've got a visa. They just walk in, just bam, there's your passport, stamped, off you go. So that was quite painless. So we'll give it. We'll pile it into C tier, I guess. And the final one, Via Rail Canada. I walked into this experience with, just for context, this was between Montreal and Quebec, so a short journey. It was 3 hours. I walked into it thinking, this is going to be the worst train journey I've ever had in my life, which would be a pretty high bar. Because I've had all this stuff in my ears constantly. Oh, Via Rail, they weigh your bags. It's such an awful experience. You have to arrive half an hour before. Look, it wasn't as bad as I thought it would be. And I know that they have changed their procedures very recently, so that was probably why. But we arrived at, well, it wasn't the platform. They had a sort of queue that you had to wait in. But I keep saying we. I don't know why. I'm not that special. I shouldn't be using a royal we. I arrived at the platform about 10 minutes before the train was meant to leave. And someone scanned my ticket. I checked my bag because the woman scanning my ticket told me to, because it was apparently a full train and they were expecting baggage space to run out. It was not a full train, and the luggage stacks were empty. But that was a pretty painless experience as well. It was just giving your bag to someone and then they stick it on the train. But in the empty first class section, it was on one of the new sets with Chargers and Ventures. Got up to reasonable speed, floated at 160 for a while, and 160 kilometers an hour, and 145 for a bit as well. But the problem was that we were late. We were 20 or 30 minutes late out of Montreal, and arrived 30 or 40 minutes late. So that wasn't good. My experience was not as bad as I predicted, but not good by any means. Train was nice though. I was at a table seat, but I was alone, luckily. Didn't align with a window. The assigned seat that I could not choose did not align with a window, but because the table was, the rest of the table was empty, I was able to maneuver myself into a position where I could actually see something. There was a lot of highway running where I could look at the cars that were going slower than the train and laugh. But yeah, it was okay. I'll put it in D tier. And before anyone asks, I'm Australian. I'm used to fairly good public transport where in Sydney, where I'm from, but only within Sydney. Ticketing is good. Service frequency is generally good all week. Once you go outside the major cities, the level of service drops, the quality of service drops. Once you go well outside Sydney, everything drops quite significantly. Tickets are a pain in the arse once you get out into the region, and they're far more expensive on like intercity regional trains, like buses in towns. But I mean, at least they exist. But so I'm not saying that, if I was to rank the public transport where I'm from, like our equivalent of Amtrak would probably be in D tier. So I'm not being sort of hypocritical or putting everything down when it should be up here. I'm sort of comparing this to European standards, because I've spent a lot of time in European cities, obviously riding trains and buses, because they are good in European cities. And, even the bad ones in Europe would really sit in B or C tier. But that is it. I realised halfway through editing that I may or may not have forgotten to include the Washington Metro. So, straight into S tier. Need I say more? The aesthetic is quite dated, but it still feels good. Feels nice. It's aged far better than the likes of Seattle and Montreal and Dallas especially. Frequent trains, they're good they're relatively nice trains. I like the aesthetic of the trains. The wayfinding is fantastic. It gets you quite a lot, quite far. Very nice station spacing in the center of the city. It's a nice system. That's why it's an S tier. It's not better than the New York subway. Like it's not any more useful than the New York subway, but it's just they are making much better use of, and it's a much nicer system when you compare it to the New York subway from the usability, but obviously not from the scale and the any of the other aspects. In much the same way, Montreal is better than the New York subway, not by scale, but just by user experience. This has been a bit of a ramble. Hope you've enjoyed it though. I will put out a video of just raw footage from my trip of what I filmed, which was not everything because I was on holiday and not there to film trains. But yeah, I hope you've enjoyed, and if you want me to do more real life content, then I certainly can. Otherwise, have a fantastic day, I hope you had a fantastic Christmas, and I'll see you next time. Goodbye.